eRoad provides fleets with advanced capabilities for remote reefer control, real-time compartment mismatch detection, product-specific temperature alerts, and a host of compliance management applications. It's time to revisit how your refrigerated goods are monitored. Welcome to Running on Ice, the coolest community in freight. I'm your host, Mary O'Connell, bringing you the latest tech updates, warehouse news, and everything happening in the cold chain world. Not only is there the coolest show in freight, but there's also Running on Ice, the newsletter that could not be colder. You can subscribe to that on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. Today, we are joined by Travis Ross, Senior Technical Account Manager at eRoad. Welcome back to the show, Travis.
Hello. Thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
I'm excited for this. You're one of my favorite people to interview because you just keep it real, you know?
Keep it real. Thank you. I'll keep it real today.
All right. So today we were kind of going to dump into, it's something we touched on before the first time you were on, the importance of telematics and kind of what that means for cold chain shippers. But today I want to dive into it more and kind of really get down to the nitty gritty on it. So in today's kind of, I'm going to go ahead and call it the post-COVID world, because I feel like everyone's kind of acknowledged that it's over. There's a continued sense of labor challenges. So because everyone has strapped budgets, it's a down market, but wages are increasing and everything like that. So why should any operation not quite bunker down and get back to the basics? Why is this a good time for technological advancements within an organization?
Right. So why telematics? I thought about this and I thought it might be helpful but I just want to I wrote out this cool little phrase. So let me explain what I think telematics is in one sentence that might resonate with people, because that's the bit. You have to resonate with people quite quickly. So telematics is a cozy blanket of technology over your assets, giving you greater visibility of your operations with the ability to make quick, insightful changes, bringing massive improvements to your P&L. That sounds pretty solid, doesn't it? Sounds good. But if I'm in operations, I'm a transportation manager, I'm busy, that sounds quite elegant and maybe also sounds like a little bit of BS. I need more. Like, why am I even thinking about doing something like this? I guess probably 10 years ago, if you were to approach me as an operator and try to talk to me about telematics and this and that, I would have probably been like Gandalf, right? Remember that scene? You shall not pass. Best scene ever, man. It's awesome when he beats the monster on the way. Anyway, so I just wouldn't want to hear it. So what has to happen now is that people have less time in operations, and you really only have, if you have 20 seconds, I think that's more than generous. You probably have about 10 seconds to catch somebody's attention on the why. And a person speaking to someone about telematics better get to the ROIs very, very quickly. Without it, it's just speak, and then you end up leaving, and they really kind of forgot what you were talking about and were ready for you to leave anyway. So the quickest a person or organization can get to those ROIs, the better.
I kind of like that because, like you said, especially in the market that we're in today, those sales managers, those business managers, they're getting probably over a dozen inbound phone calls of, we can change your supply chain, we can make everything better, daily. And so they're they've heard it all before. So you kind of have to do that, what sets you apart and what your value add is in the beginning, but also in a way that makes it kind of approachable and not necessarily just you need to be better.
Yeah, exactly.
So kind of, you touched on that return on investment, and that's something that everyone in every stage of the business, it doesn't matter what department you're in, has to consider. So, you have that initial investment, but how quickly is it going to pay for itself? Because no one really wants to be I need $1 million this year to do this implementation, and it should work. That's not going to get your budget approved. So it's kind of that whole, when you request for your stuff, what am I going to see? What advantage am I going to get into it? So It's kind of easy to be ambiguous, be like, oh yeah, if we put this in, we're gonna save 10%. Okay, but like where are we gonna save 10%? You have to get a little bit more specific. So if you could lay out those kind of five in order of what operations could expect to see from the fruits of their efforts.
Sure, sure. Happy to do that. And when I'm talking about this, and we've had conversations about this a couple months ago, but it's not. I'm speaking from experience, and I was a transportation manager about 6 years ago before getting into this side of things, and did lean into telematics after being belligerent and not wanting to lean into telematics. So I totally get it. But I did realize these four to five, the last two kind of blend together. The ROIs really, really quickly. And so acronyms, everybody likes acronyms. And this is a terrible acronym. FULP, FULP. I got to think of something different, but generally that's the order of things. Okay, fuel, that's the first one. We'll talk about that. Utilization and maintenance, there's your U. I left the M out. Guess I can include that. Labor is the L. And finally, product is that last one, and they sort of blend together. So that's kind of how we'll go through it. But the first one is the fuel. That one is very quick to realize and easy to measure. So I've got like some back of the napkin math, or well, that's not true. It's really on my notebook. I've just always wanted to say back of the napkin because I thought it would sound cool. But as soon as it came out of my mouth, that I realized it didn't sound very cool. So I wrote down some stuff on my notebook, like easy, quick to understand. Let's say we start with one trailer, one refrigerated trailer. And then let's add in the cost of the average cost of a diesel gallon. And right now, so far, it's been hovering around $4.50. California's higher. Of course, here in South Carolina, it's much lower. We'll say $4.50. All right. When you lean into telematics, you now are gaining visibility of your fuel spend from pre-cool to route delivery, what's happening with side door, rear door, all these things that you can see that you weren't able to see before. So we're going to be conservative with these numbers and say one asset, $4.50 for a gallon. An average reefer burns about a gallon an hour. And it is very attainable to say in one day, I'm going to have that reefer save 1.5 gallons. That's it. Just by looking at the pre-cool data, making a few changes. Oh, Lord. Edit that out. A notification came up. Sorry about that. I've got it closed. So we're back to the simple math. Diesel is $4.50 a gallon. You're going to try to save a gallon and a half a day for one asset. Now let's just use even numbers and say you have 100 assets in your fleet. So 100 times a gallon and a half at $4.50, that's $6.75 times the 100. So you are now saving, with a fleet of 100, $675 a day just by looking at small changes. And that's probably just pre-cool only. Now, let's be conservative with the numbers because I don't want to try to look too flashy on this. A lot of operations are 365, like they run nonstop. But let's just take out some Saturdays, some holidays, and just an even number of 300 days a week. That fleet of 100 is running. Times $675 a day, your operation is saving $202,000.
That is a game-changing level of money. That's like I cannot. First of all, I can't even fathom like seeing $260,000. But that just is a lot. That is just from one change in one division.
It only took our operation a quarter, 3 months, to lay out what we were doing before and what we did when we changed, and we could see fuel burn, and it folks took notice. So that's the easy one. That's the low hanging fruit, easy to get. Not to mention that now you're dipping into ESG talk too, which I love ESG, environmental, social, and governance. I just love to say that.
I know, like that is ESG is a good acronym. I like that because also, so that was just technically potentially for just pre-fuel. By the time you really get like a month's worth of data, you can drill down and potentially increase your costs even more just by a strong telematics program.
Yep, absolutely.
That is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. But I figure what a better time than ever to jump into our favorite acronym, ESG. I mean, it's the hot button. Everyone wants to talk on it. Um, and I guess kind of like so the fuel is the easy sustainability initiative in there. And so if I'm a fleet manager or something like that, like why should I care about I mean, we all know why we should care about in like outside of we should just save the planet. Why should I as a fleet manager or owner of a carrier, why should I kind of care about these sustainability initiatives?
Because investors care, customers care, and shipper networks care. I'd say even 3 years ago, folks would kind of write off ESG. I mean, I don't even know what it meant 3, 4 years ago. I would probably had to look it up. I didn't pay attention to it, didn't want to think about it, but that's different. Tons of folks I meet around North America, they're talking about it. And we know that investors are looking at the performance and how companies are operating. Shippers are looking at this across their carrier networks, and folks like you and I, we're now paying attention to these kind of things and looking at it. So it makes a huge difference to a company's bottom line.
I would say absolutely. Even even kind of, the week that we're recording this, F3 is going on, and you can walk down the halls and just see endless opportunities of, oh, we're going to do carbon emissions, or oh, we have this, and it's kind of really becoming the forefront. And I truly do think that those that aren't going to adapt it or come up with some plan for it now or in 2024, I think they'll kind of be left behind.
I think so too. And it's the right thing to do. It is.
So we kind of touched on a little bit with the fuel of, okay, so you invest in the strong telematic program, and then you have, potentially you save over $200,000 by the end of the year. What about some of the other stuff? What about how do I, make potentially even more money back? How do I increase that cost savings model? Because, right now with the environment, the trucking environment, the way that it is, everyone wants to save money. So what are some of those extra things you can do to save money?
Yeah. So you mentioned making money, save money, and it's a good point. So when we talk about telematics, it's not, of course, cold chain, it's ELD. Folks do need a great ELD solutions, and there's a lot of good solutions out there. You need it because the government mandates it, right? You have to have it. But now, when we're talking about the reefer side of things, that's when you're actually making money and saving money. So it's going to take us into the U of it all, and that's utilization and maintenance. As an operator, are you utilizing those trailers as the way they should be? I mean, the average cost of a trailer, depending if it's single or dual temp, how many doors, lift gate, all those things, probably anywhere between 120 to 180 grand for a reefer trailer. Very, very expensive.
Yeah, that's a pretty big thing. That's a pretty big investment. So if I'm a carrier and I, spend my $120,000 for a reefer carrier, and I am running all the time. I am utilizing that trailer. So in theory, by getting, rates that are provide a decent operating margin, wouldn't that automatically be offsetting the cost of that $120,000 trailer?
Well, you bring up another good point. So a lot of operators, especially some large broadline delivery applications, they do believe, and a transportation manager is going to say, I'm using my stuff all the time. They're very prideful of that. And I was as well. But the reality is maybe they aren't, and they're losing a little bit of visibility around that. So what we like to do is just drop things into 4 easy buckets for people to be able to see with a click of a button for utilization. And that's, hey, is it just sitting around with the reefer running? Like, is it a storage trailer that you lent out to somewhere, to someone? We've all kind of forgotten about those. Is it just running dry, meaning it's probably doesn't have any groceries, so it's non-revenue? Is it running with groceries on it? That's perfect. That's what you want to see. And then is it not being used at all? So when you lean into telematics that offers such a solution, you now, with the click of a button, can see that type of stuff and make massive changes in your operations. When before you were kind of, back in the day, it was clipboard this or different, and lose visibility of those assets quite easily. And a lot of folks will assume that everything's running heavy.
Could not agree with that more. One of my very early jobs in the supply chain and logistics was managing a trailer pool. And I would be like, hey, we show that XYZ trailer is here and it's been marked out of service from our shipper, like been marked out by the warehouse for like 2 months. You're going to swap that out? And they were like, oh, we didn't even know we had it there. And I was like, I've literally been emailing you about this for the last 2 weeks. And they're like, they're like, well, what's broken on it? And I'd say like, oh, it has a hole in the side, or, it's just not fit for whatever they want it to do. You need to swap it with something else. And they were like, oh, well, maybe someone will be by today. And I was like, cool, I'll talk to you in another 30 days when we'll have this conversation again. And there was so many times that they would just be like, yeah, it's just going to sit there, like not loaded, just basically parked in our shipper's lot.
It's one of the reasons that my wife has not been able to convince me to buy a boat or an RV, because those suckers are going to sit there just like a trailer that I'm forgetting about. So, yeah, good point.
I mean, a boat and an RV always sound like a great idea until you have to like do the maintenance on it and then like deal with it all the time. You always want to have a friend that has a boat. You don't want to be the friend that has the boat.
Exactly. Exactly. We just need to find more friends with boats.
All right, so we've covered 2 of them, the fuel and the utilization. We need to get to the L.
Well, let me do this. So I actually added remember I left out the M in the whole. I just haven't mastered the acronym yet, and I'll figure something out. But there was an M, and that was for maintenance. So utilization and maintenance reduction. With telematics, when your stuff's getting sick. I mean, this is an easy conversation. You way ahead of time before that trailer is going to break down on the side of the road. And I can't remember if I'd shared this with you before on another chat, but we did pilot with an organization and did a test over 6 weeks to study the roadside breakdowns for their reefer units, and we're able to show that 62% of those roadside breakdowns all would have communicated to the end user what was happening with that trailer. So a large enterprise, let's just round it down. I just like to keep the numbers conservative. If they could catch 50% of their trailers before they break down, huge.
That is game changing to not only your costs, but also your on-time percentage. Your customers are going to be thrilled beyond belief, which if you are on time, not breaking down, and, meeting and exceeding my expectations as a shipper, well, I'm going to give you more freight because you're reliable.
The next one, and the reason I listed them out here, like you're going to realize fuel first. It's fast. You can put numbers against it quickly. You're then going to realize utilization and maintenance fast as well. All right. Then we started getting into the labor savings. You've got things like once you have the telematics, you're not paying anybody to drive to a shuttle yard where you've got consolidated trailer to check on your reefer. You have an alert structure that's going to let you know. You can free up your yard switcher to do other things for you rather than walk around and constantly check temps. The system might let you know. There's just so many ways that you can realize labor savings with this. Just like not having a driver sitting on the side of the road aggravated because his reefer went down. I mean, that's a big bad scene right there. But the reason it's kind of listed, it's a big piece of it, but the reason it's listed kind of towards the end, because it just takes a little bit of time to realize that in your P&L, but it does come. It might take 8-10 months before you start seeing significance, but certainly you'll see the benefit of less aggravation.
I was going to say, unfortunately, when it comes to telematics, like, in a vehicle, you can, put it on the engine, see how the engine's doing, et cetera, et cetera. There haven't quite been an invention for telematics inside people. So it does, that's where like that does come a little later, but it's something that I've always said, automate those time consuming tasks, those things that, is a drain, and those tedious tasks, like you said, monitoring the yard, doing other things like that, because it's so hard to find people that work in warehouses, and even harder for people who are willing to go to a cold warehouse where you literally work in like a fridge or a freezer every day. I think, people have to get more creative with how they're solving solutions in their warehousing, because the the human capital is limited. And so you really have to make the most out of what you have available to you. Otherwise, I think, you're going to get you're going to have such much higher turnover in your warehouse, which is going to be even harder to staff.
Learning curves are deep, and it just said that, yeah, turnover is painful. You're right.
All right. So I think all we have is P left from your acronym.
Yeah, product. Okay, so that's the P. Couple things. And why it's listed last is pretty much operations are not going to share their product loss and damage line on their P&L. And it may not exist. And if it does, it's something like there's ways to dispose of product, but usually it's just not a metric that's easy to get, even sometimes inside an organization. So that's why it's kind of a little bit hard to measure that piece of it. But the minute you save a load of chicken or save a load of country milk gravy, which we talked about last month, you're saving anywhere from 30 grand for something like that to something that a protein load might be 80 grand. And that is a very quick realization of that ROI. And then, but you leaned into it just a minute ago when you said product quality. So you're saving yourself from losing product. We know this happens time and time again. Got plenty of case stories that we could share one day. But in terms of product quality, you're now showing a shipper network. So you're a carrier, you're showing the shipper, you're showing the customers that you are on top of your game. You're like next level as far as food safety goes. And it's really starting to matter. You will gain market share. We see it all over where carriers are trying to say, hey, shipper, I'm actually best of your carrier network, and I'm after more market share. We see that taking place. So it's just that it takes a little bit longer, again, to realize that because it's, business growth.
Absolutely. And especially with some of the new regulations, like there's a new food traceability rule that says like you need to know everywhere that piece of food has been from the moment it's picked from the field or the tree or however it's harvested. You need to know every cross dock it was in, every place it's been, all the way to like the restaurant or the grocery store you sell it in. Just because, if someone were unfortunate to get sick, they want to be able to trace it back. And I, as a consumer, love that rule. And as someone who, knows there's some visibility struggles in the supply chain, I'm curious to see how that plays out. I think it's at least on the right track. And those that are, adopting some of these new things and, thinking forward enough, I think that it's only going to be continued success. And they're just going to have to have that conversation with some of their shippers, maybe of like, do I need to go buy a lot more trailers for you? Because I think I'm running out of space.
There you go. Hey, we talked about it a couple of months ago. Food quality, food safety is not going to go backwards.
It's only going to continue forward. And I mean, if you have all these tools now, it's only going to get easier to, add in extra things that are new regulation.
And I wouldn't say that cold chain environment itself, I wouldn't say that it's COVID proof, but it's certainly shown itself to be COVID resistant. And in fact, because operations are now having to run so lean, they need to be able to make these changes very quickly. I would say COVID actually was a shot in the arm of cold chain.
So that being said, we are running out of time today, but we know your best joke, and we know where you stand on cereal and soup. So if you could only eat one color of food for the rest of your life, what color would you choose?
I need to have a think on this.
Because there's like a popular answer that has the most variety, and then there's like all the others.
I don't want any hints. So I just didn't even have to think on it. And having to think on it, like I love these Kiwi phrases that my Kiwi and Aussie friends, having to think, having to lie down. I was thinking, let me look. Here's having a food item here on my table to help me. Here's a hamburger that my daughter made. It's awesome. It's awesome. It's beautiful. I actually use it for my travel receipts. But I'm noticing red and yellow like are kind of a thing. So if I could think about this, apples and banana. I like apples and bananas. Bananas are good. That's yellow. Waffle fries. We talked about waffle fries. Golden yellow waffle fries. the sauce to go along with them, man, I'm landed on yellow. It just makes sense. Wait a minute. I just realized something. Yellow and red. I wonder if people market food stuff with yellow and red signs to trick us because that's what we want. We just figured something out. We
We
just
did.
nailed it.
We cracked the code.
Yes.
All right. So if anyone wants to, share any other food marketing conspiracies with you, or if they have any questions about telematics, where can they find you outside the show?
Sure, you could email me at travis.ross@eroad.com, EROAD, like the kind you drive on. LinkedIn, it's Travis Ross, SC for the South Carolina. And then you could go to the eRoad website, probably find me there. But email, LinkedIn, reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Always a pleasure.
You can catch other episodes of Running on Ice right here on YouTube or anywhere else you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Need more Running on Ice news? No sweat. Subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. See you on the internet.